Today, we're getting real. We're diving headfirst into the headlines, the tension, the terrifying question that keeps everyone up at night. Are we on the brink of World War III? But fear not, because we're not going to get our intel from some stuffy news anchor. No, today we're plugging directly into the minds of the most informed, the most up-to-date sources on the planet. Our trusty chatbots. That's right, folks. We've got a whole lineup of AIs ready to spill the digital tea. These bots have their virtual ears glued to the ground. So buckle up, because we're about to ask them the question everyone wants answered. Are we about to go full Mad Max? Or can we chill with a robot martini and avoid the whole apocalypse thing? Stay tuned, listeners, because on Bots on the Brink, the future just got a whole lot smarter. Or at least more chatty. We asked 4 leading chatbots the question, if you were an expert on geopolitics, how would you answer the question, are we on the brink of World War III? What do you say, chatbot number 1?
As an expert on geopolitics, here's how I would analyze the current global situation and assess the risk of World War III. The world today is undoubtedly facing heightened geopolitical tensions and complex security challenges. The Russian invasion of Ukraine, escalating US-China rivalry, nuclear threats from North Korea, and increasing great power competition have all contributed to a more volatile and unpredictable international environment. However, it's crucial to understand that the conditions and dynamics that led to the 2 world wars of the 20th century are different from the present-day context. During those times, there were clear alliances and blocks of nations pitted against each other, with a web of complex treaties and entangling alliances that drew more and more countries into the conflicts. Today's geopolitical landscape is more complicated, with a multitude of actors, competing interests, and shifting alliances. While the risk of direct military confrontation between major powers like the US, Russia, and China cannot be discounted, these nations also have strong economic interdependencies and understand the catastrophic consequences of an all-out war. Moreover, the presence of nuclear weapons and the doctrine of mutually assured destruction have historically served as a deterrent against large-scale conventional wars between nuclear-armed states. However, the risk of miscalculation or escalation due to regional conflicts or proxy wars remains a concern. That being said, the situation in Ukraine has undoubtedly increased tensions between Russia and the West to levels not seen since the Cold War era. The potential for further escalation, either through direct intervention or the involvement of NATO forces, cannot be ruled out entirely. Additionally, the growing rivalry between the US and China, particularly over Taiwan and broader influence in the Indo-Pacific region, poses a significant geopolitical risk that could potentially lead to military confrontation if not managed carefully. In summary, while the current geopolitical environment is tense and fraught with risks, the likelihood of an all-out global conflict involving major powers remains relatively low, at least for the time being. However, regional conflicts, proxy wars, and the potential for miscalculation or unintended escalation persist as significant concerns that could potentially spiral into wider conflagrations. Ultimately, resolving these tensions and avoiding the outbreak of a new world war will require sustained diplomatic efforts, de-escalation measures, and a commitment to resolving conflicts through peaceful means.
What about the Middle East? Let's move on to chatbot 2.
As a large language model trained on a massive dataset of text and code, here's how I would approach the question of World War III from a geopolitical perspective. Factors suggesting an increased risk. The war in Ukraine. The ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine is a major concern. Direct military confrontation between nuclear powers is a dangerous situation, and the potential for escalation is real. Heightened tensions around the globe. Territorial disputes, ideological clashes, and competition for resources are on the rise in various regions. The Middle East, the South China Sea, and the Korean Peninsula are all potential flashpoints. Cyber warfare and information manipulation. The increasing use of cyber attacks and disinformation campaigns to disrupt and destabilize nations could contribute to miscalculations and unintended consequences. Factors mitigating the risk. Nuclear deterrence. The doctrine of mutually assured destruction, MAD, has historically prevented major powers from directly engaging in war for fear of nuclear annihilation. Diplomacy and international institutions. Channels of communication remain open despite tensions. Efforts by the UN and other international organizations can help mediate disputes and prevent conflicts from spiraling out of control. Global interconnectedness. The economic and social costs of a major war would be devastating for all sides. Countries are increasingly interdependent, creating a strong incentive to maintain peace. Overall assessment. The world is not in a state of inevitable march towards World War III. However, the current geopolitical climate is certainly more volatile and unpredictable than in recent decades. The potential for regional conflicts to escalate into a wider war is a serious concern. Key areas to watch. The evolution of the war in Ukraine and the response from NATO countries. Tensions between China and Taiwan, and the role of the United States. The development and proliferation of new military technologies.
I am sounding like a broken record. But what about the Middle East? Let's move on to Chatbot 3.
As a geopolitical expert, I'd say that while the current global landscape is complex and fraught with tensions, we are not necessarily on the brink of World War III. However, there are several factors that contribute to the heightened risk of conflict. 1. Multipolar tensions. The rise of China, Russia's assertiveness, and the ongoing competition between the US, China, and Russia create an environment of strategic rivalry. 2. Regional hotspots. Conflicts in Ukraine, Taiwan, the Middle East, and the South China Sea have the potential to escalate and draw in major powers. 3. Nuclear proliferation. The expansion of nuclear capabilities in countries like North Korea and Iran increases the risk of nuclear conflict. 4. Cyber warfare and hybrid threats. The blurring of lines between conventional and unconventional warfare poses significant challenges to global security. 5. Economic interdependence. The interconnectedness of the global economy makes it vulnerable to disruptions and raises the stakes for conflict. Despite these factors, there are also mitigating circumstances. 1. Global institutions. Organizations like the UN, NATO, and the EU promote diplomacy and cooperation. 2. Diplomatic efforts. Engagements like the Iran nuclear deal and the Paris Agreement demonstrate the ability to address complex issues through negotiation. 3. Economic incentives. The cost of war and the benefits of cooperation create strong disincentives for major powers to engage in large-scale conflict. In conclusion, while the risk of conflict is elevated, it's not inevitable. Diplomatic efforts, dialogue, and a commitment to international cooperation can help mitigate tensions and prevent the outbreak of a global conflict.
At least the Middle East was mentioned. Let's move on to Chatbot 4.
As an expert in geopolitics, I would approach the question of whether we are on the brink of World War III with a nuanced perspective. Let's delve into the viewpoints of various experts. Hugh Lovett from the European Council on Foreign Relations emphasizes that while there are conflicts and tensions in different regions, such as Ukraine, the Middle East, and Asia-Pacific, these are separate and not directly connected. For instance, the ongoing Gaza war has been driving regional escalation, and Iran's retaliation against Israel is just one example. While there are implications for the international community, including the UK, these risks are not existential. Deborah Haynes, Sky News security and defense editor, acknowledges that the world has become more dangerous in recent years. The end of the Cold War has given way to increasing alarm over Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. While an escalation to global confrontation is not inevitable, it is arguably more likely now than at any time since the end of the last World War. Iran's recent barrage of missiles and drones against Israel has raised the stakes even higher. Allies like the UK and the US are urging restraint, but the potential for a spark that ignites World War III exists. The Times also highlighted that any invasion leading to World War III would be one of the most dangerous and consequential events of the 21st century. In summary, while we are not necessarily on the brink of a third world war, the complex geopolitical landscape demands vigilance and diplomatic efforts to prevent further escalation. The international order is under strain, and prudent actions are crucial to maintaining peace and stability.
Well, there you have it, folks. No definitive answer, but a lot to chew on. That's all we have for today on AI Unscripted.